Picture this. You need to assemble the ultimate superhero team for the most dangerous mission in history. Who would you pick? The strongest man alive? A musician who can tame wild beasts with his songs? Twin brothers who've never lost a fight? Well, that's exactly what one Greek prince did 3,000 years ago. His name was Jason. He gathered 50 of the greatest heroes of his time onto a single ship. Their goal? Steal a magical artifact from the other side of the world. An artifact guarded by a dragon that never sleeps. But here's the crazy part. This story didn't start with heroism. It started with betrayal, murder, and a missing sandal, and it ended even worse. Ready to find out how one of ancient Greece's greatest heroes became one of its most tragic figures? Then buckle up. Jason's story began with family drama that could rival any modern thriller. His father Aeson ruled the city of Iolcus in Thessaly. Seemed like a pretty standard Greek king setup. But Aeson had a younger brother named Pelias, and Pelias had big ambitions. Pelias didn't want to wait for his turn to rule. Why be patient when you can just take what you want? So he staged a coup and overthrew his own brother. Talk about family loyalty. Aeson found himself dethroned and imprisoned in his own palace. But here's where things get interesting. Aeson had a newborn son, Jason. Pelias knew that baby Jason would grow up to be a threat to his stolen throne. The solution seemed simple. Get rid of the kid. But Aeson wasn't going down without a fight. In a desperate move, Aeson faked his son's death. He held a fake funeral with an empty coffin while secretly smuggling baby Jason out of the city. The plan worked perfectly. Pelias thought the threat was gone, and Jason disappeared into the wilderness. The baby prince ended up in the care of Chiron, the wisest of all centaurs. Now, if you're thinking centaur equals wild horseman, think again. Chiron was different from his rowdy cousins. He was a scholar, a healer, and the ancient world's best teacher. His school in the mountains was like Harvard for future heroes. Jason grew up learning everything a prince should know. Swordsmanship, archery, medicine, music, and philosophy. But most importantly, Chiron taught him about justice and honor. The centaur knew that one day his student would need these lessons to reclaim his rightful throne. For 20 years, Jason lived in the mountains. No palace, no servants, no crown. Just hard training and harder lessons. He became strong, skilled, and wise. But he had no idea about his true identity or the kingdom that should have been his. Then came the day that changed everything. Chiron finally revealed the truth. Jason wasn't just some mountain-raised warrior. He was the rightful king of Iolcus. His uncle Pelias was a usurper who had stolen the throne through treachery and murder. The revelation hit Jason like a lightning bolt. Everything made sense now. The intensive training, the lessons about justice, the way Chiron always pushed him to be better. He had been preparing for this moment his entire life. But wait until you hear what happened when Jason decided to march back to Iolcus. The missing sandal incident that followed would set in motion one of the most epic adventures in all of mythology. And trust me, you won't see this twist coming. Jason set out for Iolcus with fire in his heart and justice on his mind. The 20-year-old prince was ready to reclaim his throne. But fate had other plans. On his way to the city, he came across a raging river with an old woman sitting by the bank. The woman looked frail and helpless. She begged Jason to carry her across the dangerous waters. Now, most people would have thought twice about helping a stranger when they had their own urgent business. But Chiron had taught Jason well. He couldn't ignore someone in need. Jason hoisted the old woman onto his back and waded into the river. The current was stronger than he expected. The water rushed around his legs, and the muddy bottom sucked at his feet. Halfway across, the river grabbed his sandal and swept it away. He made it to the other side, but now he was missing his left shoe. The old woman thanked him and disappeared. Jason didn't know it yet, but he had just carried the goddess Hera across the river. She was testing his character, and he had passed with flying colors. From that moment on, Hera became his secret protector. Jason arrived in Iolcus missing one sandal. He looked like any other traveler, dusty, tired, and slightly disheveled. But Pelias took one look at those mismatched feet and went pale. Years earlier, an oracle had warned him to beware of a man with one sandal. That man would be his downfall. The usurper king played it cool on the outside. He welcomed Jason warmly and even threw a feast in his honor. But inside, Pelias was panicking. He knew exactly who this young man was, his nephew, the rightful heir to the throne. During the feast, Jason finally revealed his identity. He didn't demand the throne back immediately. Instead, he made a reasonable proposal. Pelias could keep the crown and the wealth, but Jason wanted his father's freedom and his rightful place in the kingdom. Pelias listened with a fake smile. He wasn't about to give up power that easily, but he couldn't just murder Jason in front of the entire court either. The king needed a more creative solution, and boy did he come up with a doozy. Pelias stood up and made a dramatic announcement. He would gladly hand over the throne to Jason, but only if the young prince could prove himself worthy. The task? Bring back the golden fleece from the distant land of Colchis. Simple, right? The entire hall gasped. The golden fleece was legendary, a magical ram's hide that hung in a sacred grove thousands of miles away. It was guarded by a dragon that never slept and protected by King Aeetes, who had never lost a battle. Asking for the golden fleece was like asking someone to steal fire from the gods. But here's what made it even more impossible. The golden fleece wasn't just any magical artifact. It came from the ram that had rescued Phrixus and Helle, two royal children fleeing their murderous stepmother. The ram had flown them across the sea to safety in Colchis, where it was sacrificed to Zeus. The fleece had incredible powers. It could heal any wound, bring prosperity to any land, and even grant immortality to those who possessed it. No wonder King Aeetes guarded it so carefully. No wonder Pelias thought sending Jason after it was a death sentence. Jason looked around the silent hall. Every face showed the same expression, pity mixed with horror. They all knew Pelias had just signed his nephew's death warrant, but Jason surprised everyone, including himself. He accepted the challenge. Maybe it was youth, maybe it was pride, maybe it was the divine favor of Hera flowing through his veins. Whatever it was, Jason stood up and declared that he would bring back the golden fleece. The hall erupted in whispers and gasps. Pelias smiled his crocodile smile. Perfect. He had gotten rid of his rival without getting his hands dirty. Jason would sail off to die in some foreign land, and the kingdom would remain his. What could possibly go wrong? Well, Pelias was about to find out that underestimating a hero trained by Chiron and blessed by Hera was a very bad idea. Because Jason wasn't planning to go to Colchis alone. He was about to assemble the greatest crew of heroes the world had ever seen. Jason knew he couldn't steal the golden fleece alone. This wasn't a job for one hero. It was a job for an entire army of legends. So he came up with a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. He would build the greatest ship ever constructed and fill it with the most legendary heroes of his time. First, he needed a shipbuilder. Enter Argus, the master craftsman who could work miracles with wood and bronze. But this wasn't going to be an ordinary ship. Athena herself took an interest in the project. The goddess of wisdom and warfare provided a special beam from her sacred oak tree in Dodona. This wasn't just any piece of wood. The beam could speak and give prophecies. It would serve as the ship's figurehead and guide the crew through their adventures. Talk about supernatural GPS. The finished vessel was called the Argo, and it was a masterpiece of ancient engineering. Now came the real challenge, recruiting the crew. Jason sent out a call to every hero in Greece. He was looking for the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the absolute legends of their time. And incredibly, they started showing up. First to arrive was Hercules, the strongest man who ever lived. He had already completed several of his famous labors and was looking for a new adventure. Having Hercules on your team was like having a one-man army. The guy could probably arm wrestle a mountain and win. Next came Orpheus, the musician whose songs could charm wild beasts and make trees dance. His music was so beautiful that it could calm storms and soothe savage hearts. He would serve as the crew's entertainment, but his talents went far deeper than that. The Dioscuri twins, Castor and Pollux, joined the expedition next. These brothers were unbeatable in combat and had never lost a fight. Castor was the greatest horseman alive, while Pollux was the ultimate boxer. They were like having a two-man special forces unit. Admetus brought his skills as a master of horses and chariots. Ancaeus was a skilled helmsman who could navigate by the stars. Euphemos could run so fast across water that his feet barely got wet. Each hero brought something unique to the table. Then there was Atalanta, the only woman among the Argonauts. She was the fastest runner in Greece and could shoot an arrow with deadly accuracy. Some of the male heroes grumbled about having a woman on the crew, but Jason knew talent when he saw it. Besides, Atalanta could probably outrun and outshoot half the men complaining about her. Zetes and Calais, the winged sons of the north wind, joined the crew. These two could literally fly and would prove invaluable in battles against flying monsters. Imagine having teammates who could scout from the air and attack from above. The prophet Idmon signed up even though he foresaw his own death on the journey. Now that's dedication to the cause. His ability to see the future would save the crew multiple times, even if it couldn't save himself. By the time recruitment was finished, Jason had assembled 50 heroes. They called themselves the Argonauts, after their magnificent ship. It was like the ancient world's version of the Avengers, except these guys were heading into unknown waters with no backup plan. The ship was loaded with supplies, weapons, and enough food for a long journey. The heroes said their goodbyes to family and friends. Some would never see home again, but they all knew the risks. The chance for eternal glory was worth any danger. Jason stood on the deck of the Argo, looking at his incredible crew. 50 heroes who had answered his call. 50 legends ready to follow him to the ends of the earth. It was the most ambitious expedition in human history. The people of Iolcus gathered at the harbor to watch the departure. Some came to cheer, others to mourn. Everyone knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. Pelias watched from his palace window, probably thinking he'd never see his nephew again. The Argonauts raised the sail, and the magical beam from Athena's tree began to glow. The ship moved away from shore, carrying its legendary cargo toward an uncertain destiny. Their destination, the distant kingdom of Colchis. Their goal, the impossible theft of the Golden Fleece. But before they could reach Colchis, they would face sea monsters, hostile armies, and magical perils that would test every hero to their limits. The real adventure was just beginning, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. The Argonauts sailed away from familiar Greek waters. Their destination lay far to the east, beyond the known world. But first, they needed supplies and rest. Their ship pointed toward the mysterious island of Lemnos. Something was very wrong on Lemnos. No men walked the streets. Only women ruled this island kingdom. The Argonauts discovered a dark secret. The Lemnian women had killed all their husbands and fathers. Why? Their men had abandoned them for Thracian slave women. Talk about taking revenge to the extreme. Queen Hypsipyle welcomed the heroes with open arms. She offered them food, wine, and companionship. The Argonauts stayed for months, enjoying the hospitality. Some even started families with the Lemnian women. But Hercules grew impatient. He reminded Jason of their real mission. The Golden Fleece wasn't going to steal itself. The crew reluctantly left their comfortable paradise. They sailed northeast toward the mysterious lands of Thrace. Their next stop would test their courage in ways they never imagined. Strange creatures awaited them, and an old blind king needed their help. The Argonauts reached the court of King Phineus. This ruler had once been blessed with the gift of prophecy, but he had revealed too many of Zeus's secrets. The king of the gods punished him with eternal blindness. That wasn't the worst part of his curse, though. Every time Phineus tried to eat, the harpies attacked. These were winged monsters with women's faces and vultures' bodies. They swooped down and snatched his food away. What they couldn't steal, they contaminated with their foul droppings. The king was slowly starving to death. Two Argonauts stepped forward to help, Calais and Aeetes. These sons of the north wind had wings of their own. They could fly just as fast as the Harpies. The winged brothers chased the monsters across the sky. They finally cornered them at the floating islands, where the Harpies promised never to bother Phineus again. The grateful king shared vital information with Jason. He warned them about the Symplegades, the clashing rocks. These enormous stones guarded the entrance to the Black Sea. They crashed together whenever anything tried to pass between them. Many ships had been crushed to splinters in their deadly embrace. Phineus revealed the secret to surviving the clashing rocks. The Argonauts should release a dove first. If the bird made it through, they could follow quickly behind. The rocks needed time to reset after each clash. Timing would be everything. The Argo approached the terrifying Symplegades. These weren't ordinary rocks. They were living creatures of stone. They sensed approaching ships and slammed together with thunderous force. The water between them boiled and frothed from their constant movement. Jason released a white dove as Phineus had instructed. The bird flew straight toward the gap between the rocks. The Symplegades crashed together with incredible speed. For a moment, everyone thought the dove was dead. Then they saw it emerge on the other side, alive, but missing its tail feathers. The rocks slowly began to separate again. This was their chance. The Argonauts rowed with all their strength. Orpheus played his lyre, keeping perfect time for the oarsmen. The Argo shot forward like an arrow. The Symplegades sensed the ship and began closing again. The race was incredibly close. The massive stones scraped the stern of the Argo as it burst through. The ship lost part of its decorative tail just like the dove. But they had made it. The Symplegades had been defeated. According to legend, the rocks never moved again after that day. The Argonauts had entered the Black Sea. They were now in completely foreign waters. Strange peoples lived along these shores. Different gods ruled these lands. Jason's greatest challenges still lay ahead. But first, they needed to reach Colchis and meet its powerful king. The Argo finally reached Colchis after months of dangerous travel. This kingdom sat at the edge of the known world. Dense forests covered the land. Strange customs ruled the people. King Aeetes controlled this mysterious realm with an iron fist. Jason and his companions approached the royal palace. King Aeetes received them in his great hall. Golden decorations covered every surface. The king himself wore robes that sparkled with precious gems, but his eyes held no warmth for these foreign visitors. Aeetes listened to Jason's request for the golden fleece. The king's face showed no emotion. He had expected this day would come eventually. The fleece hung in a sacred grove guarded by a sleepless dragon. No one had ever successfully stolen it before. The king agreed to give Jason the fleece, but only if he could complete 3 impossible tasks. First, he must yoke 2 fire-breathing bulls. These bronze beasts had been gifts from Hephaestus himself. Their breath could melt stone and char flesh in seconds. Second, Jason must use these bulls to plow a field. Then, he must plant dragon's teeth in the furrows. These weren't ordinary seeds. They would sprout into fully armed warriors. The soldiers would immediately try to kill whoever had planted them. Third, Jason must defeat all these earth-born warriors in combat. Only then could he attempt to take the golden fleece from its dragon guardian. Aeetes smiled as he explained these tasks. He was certain this Greek hero would die trying. But the gods had other plans. Hera and Athena wanted Jason to succeed. They asked Aphrodite for help with the king's daughter. The goddess of love agreed to intervene. She sent her son Eros with a special mission. Princess Medea was studying in her tower when Eros struck. His golden arrow pierced her heart with perfect aim. She immediately fell desperately in love with Jason. The princess had never experienced such powerful emotions before. Her thoughts turned to the handsome Greek hero. Medea possessed incredible magical powers. She was a priestess of Hecate, goddess of witchcraft. Her knowledge of herbs and potions was legendary throughout Colchis. She could heal the sick or poison the healthy with equal skill. The princess faced a terrible choice. Should she help her father destroy these foreign invaders, Or should she save the man she now loved more than life itself? Her heart won the battle. She decided to secretly help Jason survive the impossible tasks. Medea met Jason by moonlight in Hecate's temple. She offered him a magical ointment that would protect him from fire. The potion would make his skin immune to the bull's deadly breath. But her help came with a price. Jason must promise to marry her and take her back to Greece. Jason eagerly agreed to her terms. What choice did he have? Without Medea's magic, he would certainly die the next day. The princess gave him detailed instructions for surviving each task. She also shared the secret of defeating the dragon-born warriors. The next morning, Jason stood before the fire-breathing bulls. These mechanical monsters charged toward him with red-hot breath. Their bronze hooves left molten footprints in the earth, but Medea's ointment protected the hero perfectly. The flames felt like a cool breeze on his skin. Jason grabbed the first bull by its horns. The beast thrashed and bucked, trying to shake him off. Steam rose from its nostrils as it breathed fire directly at his face. But the hero held on tight. He forced the bronze creature to submit to his will. The second bull proved just as difficult to tame. It charged Jason repeatedly, trying to gore him with its sharp horns. But the hero's supernatural strength prevailed. Soon both bulls wore heavy wooden yokes around their necks. Jason guided the fire-breathing bulls across the sacred field. They plowed deep furrows in the hard earth. The hero scattered dragon's teeth like seeds behind them. The teeth sank deep into the dark soil, waiting to sprout their deadly harvest. Within minutes, armored warriors began emerging from the ground. They pushed up through the dirt like deadly flowers blooming. Each warrior carried a bronze spear and a round shield. Their eyes glowed with supernatural hatred for Jason. The hero remembered Medea's crucial advice. Instead of fighting the warriors himself, he threw a large stone into their midst. The earthborn soldiers immediately turned on each other. They couldn't tell who had thrown the stone, so they attacked everyone nearby. The dragon-toothed warriors fought with incredible fury. Their bronze weapons clanged against shields and armor. One by one they fell until none remained standing. Jason had completed the first two impossible tasks without losing a drop of blood. King Aeetes watched in stunned silence. He had never expected the Greek hero to survive. But he wasn't ready to honor their agreement just yet. The king began planning treachery. He would kill Jason and his companions during the night. But Medea had read her father's intentions. She rushed to warn Jason about the coming danger. There was only one solution. They must steal the golden fleece immediately and escape before dawn. The most dangerous part of their adventure was about to begin. Can you believe Jason made it this far? Wait until you hear about the actual theft of the golden fleece. The dragon guarding it had never slept for a single moment. Keep watching to see how love and magic combine for the ultimate heist. Medea led Jason through the dark forests of Colchis. The sacred grove lay deep in the wilderness, far from the royal palace. Ancient oak trees towered overhead, their branches blocking out the moonlight. This was hallowed ground, protected by the gods themselves. The golden fleece hung from the largest oak tree in the grove. Even in the darkness it glowed with supernatural light. The wool shimmered like captured sunlight, more beautiful than anything Jason had ever seen. But between him and his prize coiled the most terrifying guardian imaginable. The dragon was enormous, longer than the Argo itself. Its scales gleamed like polished bronze in the fleece's golden light. Multiple heads swayed back and forth, each one watching for intruders. This wasn't just any monster. It was a child of the earth itself, born from the blood of ancient titans. Most terrifying of all, the dragon never slept. Its eyes had remained open for generations, always vigilant. No weapon could pierce its armored hide. Its poison breath could kill a dozen men instantly. Many heroes had tried to steal the fleece before. Their bones littered the grove floor. Medea stepped forward with a vial of mysterious liquid. She had brewed this potion specially for tonight's mission. The princess began chanting in an ancient language older than Greek civilization. Her voice rose and fell in hypnotic rhythms that seemed to make the very air shimmer. The dragon's massive heads turned toward the sound. Its eyes, which had never closed, began to grow heavy. The monster fought against the spell with incredible willpower, but Medea's magic was too strong. One by one, the dragon's heads drooped toward the ground. Jason moved quickly while the beast slumbered. He climbed the sacred oak with practiced ease. The golden fleece felt warm to his touch, pulsing with divine power. He wrapped it around his shoulders like a royal cloak. The wool was softer than silk, yet stronger than bronze armor. But their troubles were just beginning. King Aeetes had discovered Medea's treachery. Royal guards were already searching the forests with torches and hounds. The king's rage burned hotter than his bronze bull's breath. He would show no mercy to his traitorous daughter or her Greek lover. Medea made a decision that would haunt her forever. Her younger brother Absyrtus had followed them into the grove. The prince was only a boy, curious about his sister's midnight adventure. Medea saw him as both a threat and an opportunity. The princess killed her own brother with a poisoned blade. Then she dismembered his body and scattered the pieces along their escape route. This wasn't random cruelty. It was calculated strategy. She knew her father would stop to collect every piece of his son for proper burial. Different times, different desperate measures. The gruesome plan worked perfectly. King Aeetes found the first piece of his son's body and halted his pursuit. Greek tradition meant nothing to him, but Colchian customs demanded proper funeral rites. He spent precious hours gathering the scattered remains while Jason and Medea reached the Argo. The Argonauts sailed away from Colchis as fast as their oars could carry them, but escaping the kingdom was only the beginning of their problems. Medea's murder of Absyrtus had angered the gods themselves. Zeus sent storms and contrary winds to slow their journey home. The crew faced a terrible choice. They could abandon Medea and Jason to divine justice, or they could all share in the punishment. The other Argonauts chose loyalty over safety. They would stand by their leader no matter what the gods demanded. The Argo took a completely different route home. Instead of retracing their original path, they sailed up strange rivers into unknown lands. Some stories say they traveled through the heart of Europe itself. Others claim they sailed around the entire continent of Africa. Everywhere they stopped, local peoples tried to claim the Golden Fleece for themselves. Word had spread about its incredible power. Kings and pirates alike attempted to steal it from the heroes. But the Argonauts had come too far to lose their prize now. Finally, after months of additional adventures, the Argo reached familiar Greek waters. Jason could see the coastline of Iolcus in the distance. His Uncle Pelias waited there, probably never expecting to see his nephew alive again. Time for the ultimate family reunion. But Jason had learned much during his journey. He wasn't the same naive young man who had left Greece years before. The hero now understood that some battles couldn't be won with strength alone. Sometimes you needed a witch's cunning and magic to claim victory. Jason returned to Iolcus with the golden fleece draped across his shoulders. King Pelias stared in shock at his nephew's success. The old king had been certain the quest would kill Jason. Instead, the young hero had assembled the greatest team in Greek history and accomplished the impossible. But Pelias had no intention of honoring their agreement. He had ruled Iolcus for decades and wouldn't surrender his throne easily. The king claimed Jason had taken too long to complete the quest. He invented new conditions and demanded additional proof of worthiness. Medea had anticipated this treachery. She offered to handle Pelias personally, using her magical powers. The princess convinced the king's own daughters that she could restore their father's youth. She demonstrated by cutting up an old ram and boiling it with special herbs. Miraculously, a young lamb emerged from the cauldron. The daughters fell for the trick completely. They killed their sleeping father and chopped him into pieces, just as Medea had instructed. But when they boiled the pieces, no miracle occurred. Pelias remained very dead, and his daughters realized they had been manipulated into patricide. Jason had finally claimed his rightful throne, but at a terrible cost. The people of Iolcus were horrified by the king's murder. They blamed Jason for bringing the foreign witch to their city. The hero and his bride were forced into exile, carrying their shameful victory with them. The couple fled to Corinth, where King Chiron welcomed them. Jason and Medea settled into a new life, far from their troubled past. They had 2 sons together and seemed to find happiness at last. For 10 years, they lived as ordinary citizens rather than legendary heroes. But fame and power are addictive drugs. Jason grew restless, living as a common man in Corinth. He missed the glory of his heroic days and the respect that came with royal blood. When King Chiron offered his daughter's hand in marriage, Jason saw an opportunity to reclaim his former status. The hero announced his intention to divorce Medea and marry Princess Glauce instead. This new alliance would make him heir to Corinth's throne. Jason convinced himself he was making a practical decision. After all, Medea was a foreign barbarian while Glauce was proper Greek nobility. Medea's fury knew no bounds. She had sacrificed everything for Jason: her family, her homeland, her very soul. She had murdered her own brother to ensure their escape. Now this ungrateful man planned to discard her like worn-out clothing for a younger, more politically advantageous wife. The scorned sorceress crafted her revenge with chilling precision. She created a beautiful golden crown and an elegant dress as wedding gifts for the new bride. Both items were soaked in deadly poison that would activate when worn. The gifts appeared completely innocent and perfectly appropriate. Princess Glauce put on Medea's wedding presents with delight. The poison worked immediately, searing her flesh like liquid fire. The crown melted into her skull while the dress burned through her skin. She died in absolute agony while her father tried desperately to save her. The poison killed him too when he touched his daughter. But Medea wasn't finished with her revenge. She knew the one thing that would hurt Jason more than anything else: their children. If he wanted to start a new family with a new wife, he would have to live with the consequences of abandoning his first family. Medea killed her own sons with the same poisoned blade she had used on her brother years before. She felt each death like a knife in her own heart, but her rage demanded this ultimate sacrifice. Jason would never forget the price of his betrayal. The hero arrived home to find his children's bodies and his ex-wife preparing to leave. Medea had summoned a golden chariot pulled by dragons, a gift from her grandfather Helios. She flew away from Corinth forever, carrying the bodies of their sons with her. Jason was left with nothing. His new bride was dead. His children were dead. His reputation was destroyed throughout Greece. The golden fleece, once the symbol of his greatest triumph, now felt like a curse around his shoulders. The hero who had once led the greatest team in history died alone and forgotten. Some say Jason was killed when a piece of the rotting Argo fell on him as he slept beneath it. Others claim he simply wasted away from grief and shame. Either way, the man who had once seemed destined for eternal glory met an inglorious end. Jason's story teaches us harsh lessons about the true cost of fame and glory. He assembled the greatest superhero team of the ancient world and accomplished impossible feats. But success came at a price he never calculated: his humanity, his relationships, and ultimately his soul. The hero's greatest strength was his ability to inspire others to follow him. Hercules, Orpheus, and dozens of other legends chose to risk everything for Jason's quest. But his greatest weakness was taking that loyalty for granted. When he betrayed Medea, he lost more than a wife. He lost his honor. Modern storytellers still draw inspiration from Jason's tale. Every team-based superhero story owes something to the Argonauts. Every quest narrative follows the pattern Jason established. But few modern heroes fall as far or as completely as this ancient Greek prince. The golden fleece itself became a symbol of achievement that costs too much to obtain. Sometimes the treasure we seek isn't worth the price we pay to claim it. Jason learned this lesson too late to save himself or the people he loved. What do you think about Jason's story? Was he a hero who made terrible choices, or was he always destined for tragedy? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Greek mythology, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more legendary stories from the ancient world.